Welcome to our first episode of Masks Off. I'm Kim Gross. And today we are just here to introduce ourselves and to let you know what our intentions are for this show. So I'm a mom of two, and I have a 20-year-old and 17-year-old. I am a RTT therapist, rapid transformational therapist, which is hypnosis. And I have been on this journey of finding my true self and taking off the masks for about 25 years. And today we're going to just tell you a little bit about what the show will include, and we will each give an example of a mask that we wear.
I'm Tia. I'm mom of two 19-year-olds, so I have twin daughters. I've been on this journey of reconnecting to myself and understanding that I even wore masks. I didn't even know they were there. Probably about 20 years, basically, since motherhood came into play is when I really started to, all of a sudden, the awakening had to start for me. It wasn't really a choice. I didn't know it at the time, but my children just reminded me of, this is what you have to do, and we're going to help you and show you. So I'm a former engineer. I'm now a certified conscious parent coach, which is really why my children are my greatest teachers, and I help people navigate, and not just with their kids, but what we're talking about on this podcast is reconnecting to our true self, getting in touch with our inner knowing and recognizing how often we aren't speaking our truth and how often we are wearing these masks to hide certain parts of us that we're afraid to show the world. So we're really excited of what's going to show up, because these are not scripted. We are just we have an idea we're going to talk about, and that's our hope for the podcast is you see us as we peel back our masks, and it gives you the courage to do the same.
So just to give you a little backdrop on how Tia and I formed and started this idea for a podcast. So we met each other through a mutual online course a few years ago, and we reconnected in the fall. And since then, we've been having conversations frequently, and we just get into these really deep, great conversations about being more authentic and just how the mask that each of us wears shows up in our lives. And just one day we were saying to each other, we should just really record these conversations because wouldn't this just make a great podcast for people? And so we decided we were going to do that. And honestly, for me, creating this podcast is taking off one of my biggest masks, because we are going to have real, authentic conversations with you. And in order to do so, I'm going to have to be vulnerable and share some truths about myself. And that is extremely difficult for a perfectionist, which is one of my biggest masks, is to put out to the world that everything is perfect, that I'm all put together, and my life is just a bowl of cherries. So for me to put this out here and do this podcast is literally ripping a Band-Aid off and ripping off a mask and sharing with you. So one of my masks is being a perfectionist.
Oh, I'm familiar with that one, as you know. And I love that you shared how, we've known each other for years online, and how when we finally got to meet in person, and it just everything was normal and natural and flowed because we could be who we are. And so having all those conversations that we've had, but now recording them changes it. But it doesn't change it. And that's the beauty, because we really want to show up for each other and show up for all of our listeners, because this is where it is. This is empowering, and it feels really good, even though it's super scary, especially, letting go of that perfectionist mask. It's huge. Another one that I have, and we'll talk about these masks over the episodes and whatever else comes up. but is people pleaser. I didn't realize how much of a people pleaser I was and how much I was doing for others without even really thinking about if it's something I wanted to do. And if it was in alignment with me. I mean, it never crossed over into anything dangerous or, illegal or anything like, but just normal living life with friends and family and spouse and kids, it just all of a sudden I'm like, why am I doing everything? Because I want everyone to like me, and I want to not have that feeling of someone judging or, and that layers over into all sorts of other masks, which we'll talk about. But yeah, it's kind of interesting being vulnerable right now because it's being recorded. It's not just you and I having a conversation.
It's completely different. And I can relate to what you said as well about being the people pleaser. I feel as if I have lived a majority of my life for other people, to the tune of when I was 30, because we have these checklists in our lives, right? You go to school, you graduate, you go to college, you get married, you have kids, you have a family, and there's this prescribed checklist for life. So when I was 30 and I didn't have kids yet, and my husband is like, okay, so, when are we going to have kids? And to be honest, fully honest and transparent, I never wanted to have kids. I didn't know if I wanted to. That was the thing. I didn't even know. I knew I was really scared to have kids. I didn't know if I would be a good mom. And I just went forward with it because it was what was expected of me. So, and I, in hindsight, don't regret my kids. I love my kids to death. But I've spent the last 20 years being a stay-at-home mom, and I'm not sure if that was always authentic for me.
Right. It's amazing how the expectations that are put upon us, whether it's a conscious expectation of our parents or whatever, it's continuing the cycle without anyone questioning. And I'm really excited that we're on this journey of questioning and helping our kids begin to question what society and other people expect of us. And, to watch their unfolding is really interesting. And speaking of kids, because we talked about this before, we're going to do our best to just share our stories and not share personal stories of our children or people in our lives, just to protect, it's not up to us to take off other people's masks, and we only can take off our own. So if you find that we're not sharing details about our children or partners, just understand that's out of respect of understanding they're on their own journey, and it's really not up to us. We may share situations, but we're going to do our best not to share details of the other, just details of ourselves out of respect.
And so before we close out this episode, I was sharing with you that I've been reading the book by Alicia Keys, More Myself, and it's completely about taking masks off. So I'll just share one quick line. She was talking about not shining her light. So she says, quote, "Don't outshine others." But there on her couch, it hit her that her alleged modesty was just a disguise, a mask for a lack of self-worth. It was a huge revelation.
Wow.
So I thought that was really powerful, that just to be modest, we think we're being a good person by being modest, when in fact, it is just more a mask of not having self-worth and not shining our light.
Yes. And that reminds me of another quote. I'll share it in another episode, but it's similar. I think it'd be great if we put that quote in the show notes. So we'll add that in there. I'm really glad you shared that. That's fantastic. So we'll put that in the show notes. So make sure you check that out. And we'll wrap up episode 1. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
See you in episode 2. Bye.